Hello, this is Kris Nelson from evolvedconsciousness.org. Today I will be reading the article Ego, Personality, Identity Attachment. This is Self-Knowledge Barriers, Part 4A. 4B will be the second part, which is Attachment to Institutional Belief Systems. That's Part 4B, which will come up next. Just a brief introduction. An ego, personality, identity attachment is based on our sense of self. So I call this now an ego, personality, identity construct, because the ego is a sense of I, and identity is I. It's your identity, and personality deals with you. So it's I. It's all I-ness. Ego is I, personality is I, identity is I. It's all self-image, self-concept, how I view myself, how I carry myself, how I act, what is my character. The ego, the personality, and identity are the three main words in the English language I find that reflect who we currently are and who we formerly were and who we can become. It's our attachment to things that usually create our identity, our personality, and our calcified ego. When we can let go of things, we can decalcify our ego to be less in ego. We can alter our personality and alter our identities and reshape them in any way we want. And to do that, we need to let go of our attachment, which is more related to ego in these three words, but the ego, personality, identity is a sense of I, your sense of self. So I will begin with the article. Attachment to an erroneous belief construct used as a form of identification, self-image, self-worth, purpose, meaning, etc., is a deeply ingrained condition of the current human psyche. We identify who we are with roles we engage in. A standard topic brought in when meeting someone new is to ask them what they do, their job, where they live, etc. We are identifying with the lower physical self and always talking about physical occupancy matters or daily living and not much of any real substance, such as deeper aspects of consciousness. We do this because many of us orient our lives around roles we identify with. We think we are a teacher, a cop, a nurse, a CEO, a military officer, a politician, and that is our title. We do this career for a long time until we eventually retire. While we are doing it, we identify with it and become attached to that thing we do. We are doing certain things, but it is not the totality of who we are. Identification with these illusions as defining who we are in life is ego-based identification because it is focused on the physical self and false belief constructs that we base our ways of living upon in the physical material world. We defend, excuse, and justify many things we identify with, regardless of whether those identifications are accurate, right, good, and true, or false, bad, and inaccurate. And I've mentioned this in my other work since writing this article in early 2014, that we use these aspects of falsity as a basis for our ego, personality, identity construct, which becomes our sense of self, our self-image, our self-concept, and our worldview. So when we base our sense of self on falsity, we become attached to it, and we become attached to falsity and perpetuating falsity and evil and immorality, and we can't see ourselves honestly because we're too attached to our behavior. And the aspect of our jobs, what we do as a career, ties into how we identify with our behavior, which is what we do, and we don't look at it honestly to see that our jobs aren't important or they're doing evil. We're not able to face the wrongs we do because of our attachments to these falsities, to these wrongs, to these evils, to these immoralities. And we can't change because we're not able to be honest with ourselves, because we're attached to falsity and use it as a basis for our sense of self, for our identity, our personality, how we engage others, how we comport ourselves, our character. So it's all related to how we view ourselves and how we express ourselves, and it's based on our ego, personality, identity construct, which is all constructed since our birth. The impositions and reinforcements our parents and society and teachers and other children give us as we grow up shape our ego, personality, identity constructs. Even if there isn't calcified ego, it still shapes our ego, personality, identity constructs. Even if it was all good, it would still, the person we would become would be based on our past experiences. Not only that, but they largely influence who we become. The influences of the words other people use. When we do a behavior, our parents reinforce it, or they suppress it through negative reinforcement and how it's not a positive thing, and they say that's not good, so then you choose not to be that way because your parents tell you it's not the way you should be. And then you become a way that you think you should be because your parents reinforce it and other people. Anyways, it's all malleable, it's all changeable. That's the punchline in the end, is that learn alchemy, learn natural law expressions, learn the trivium, and change yourself. Seek truth and morality, and you can change yourself in any way you want. We're all chameleons, we're all shapeshifters, and we can change anything we want about ourselves if we want to. First, you have to be honest with yourself and be able to recognize everything that is bad, wrong, inaccurate, false, immoral, and evil. Or else you're not going to be able to change. You're going to keep holding on to it, attaching to it for dear life because that's who you think you are. And if you would let go of that thing that's false, then you think you're destroying yourself and you're lost. Well, that's good. Destroy yourself and be lost. And then you can find yourself in the truth and morality. That's what happened to me. In so many words. Not exactly like that, but the only way you're going to find yourself is with truth and morality. I've expressed this in other audios where I was the most lost, and truth is what helped me find myself. Even before I understood the quest and path to truth and everything, I recognized that I was lost and I was trying to figure things out. And truth and morality is the way to find yourself. And anyone who wants to deny that doesn't know themselves. They don't even understand what your true self is. You don't understand much about the reality we live in or how to make it a good place that will be in true happiness and true freedom and true peace and true order. Everything good. Anyways, enough of that side tangent. To continue with the article, our careers, companies, bosses, families, governments, nations, countries, sport teams, celebrities, religions, fashions, etc. are all examples of illusory belief systems people put their time and energy into and associate and correspond with an aspect of their identity and sense of self. We can put our time and energy into things that would actually produce positive results we all want, that are in alignment with what is right, good, and true. When we understand the root causal factors and nature of the problem in order not to produce the same results. The current ways of living we choose to engage in are not conducive to what we truly want, but we continue to do the same things anyways. Popular literature wants to convince people that they have to kill their ego, abandon it, cast it aside, etc. This view comes from seeing the ego as negative without any positive aspects. The negative ego attachments are what need to be cast aside because they are based on illusions, deceptions, and lies. We all have an ego. What purpose does the conception we define as the ego serve? Our sense of I is our ego, personality, identity construct. The ego is a tool we have for interaction with the physical reality we exist in. The ego also concerns itself with self-preservation of the organism, survival, defense, etc. For example, if we were to talk if we were to walk through a forest and a tree branch breaks above us and is following towards us, our ego, our sense of me-ness and otherness, enables us to distinguish the difference between ourselves and the various aspects of our environment. Without our ability to discern, identify, connect, and separate, we would not recognize the other tree branch, and it would fall on our heads. The ego is a tool for living in reality that allows us to see ourselves apart from the rest of reality. This way I can dress myself, feed myself, and live instead of being unable to interact with my environment due to a lack of discernment of not being able to see myself apart from the rest of what is. Separation, distinction are also regarded in a completely negative light by many popularizers of New Age pseudo-spirituality. We are free to see the separation, difference, distinction, etc. that exists because everything in the universe has varying degrees of comparative similarity and difference. The issue with distinction, difference, etc. is when that becomes the focus in life and one is ruled by them instead of simply recognizing them as extant. Focusing and being ruled by the differences in all that is can lead to a great negative consequences, such as those in our past and present who seek to control and dominate others. We are free to recognize distinction and similarity. The comparisons that help determine the distinction, difference, sameness, similarity, etc. between various aspects of the universe are often avoided by those who fear the negatives that can arise. The negative that can arise from comparison, distinction, ego, identity, etc. is not the fault of the tool at our availability. The negative can arise from improperly using a tool. The negative that can arise from improperly using a tool lies in our hands. We are the ones acting, doing, and putting energy into a particular tool. We are the ones that determine how the tool is used. We are the ones who use specific tools for specific circumstances. We can learn how to use a tool correctly, accurately, properly, etc. Through our ignorance, we use a tool ineffectively by not knowing all that it can do for us and all that it cannot do for us. How it works, where to use it, when to use it, and what to use it on. Trying to hammer in a nail with a screw gun doesn't work. Trying to screw in a screw with a hammer doesn't work either. Failure to use a tool effectively is our issue, our fault, not the tool's fault that is here to help us perform certain functions. And this I've heard from New Ager I used to be involved with. Whenever they would fail to understand logic or fail to use language properly, their excuse would be, oh, well, language is limited and logic is flawed. That's all. They don't need to correct their logic. They don't need to correct their language use. They don't need to understand language and logic more correctly and accurately to improve their ability to use it in their own lives. No, they just need to dismiss it. Logic is flawed. Language is limited. There you go. It's the tool. It's all the tool's fault. It's not my fault. I'm not the moron who believes in New Age bullshit. No, I'm not the idiot. It's the tool that's the idiot. Blame the tool, so that way I don't have to look at myself in the mirror honestly to see how I'm limited, how I'm limiting myself, how I don't know how to think, how I'm preventing myself from learning, because all I believe in is I learn from nature. God teaches me. I don't need to learn from anybody else. Well, continue to be an idiot that keeps blaming the tools at our disposal to improve our ability to perceive, conceive, navigate, and understand reality. No, let's forget about the tools and let's just blame them when they fail us so that we don't have to actually improve our use of the tool, our ability to handle the tool. No, we can just keep blaming the tool over and over into infinity until we decay into stagnation and entropy. Yep. Fun, fun, fun. Idiots. It's unbelievable. To continue, our failure to understand aspects of reality and ourselves the tools, is the reason we are not engaging, interacting, and manifesting what we really want. What we really want, even if our ego, personality, identity selves are not aware of it at our particular levels of consciousness, is to be in alignment with our true self, and higher will, which is what is right, good, and true. Ignorance of ourselves, our internal and external tools to operate in physical reality, is why we are where we are. It is the reason we walk false paths that are not more in alignment with higher will, higher self, goodness, rightness, and trueness. Currently, separation and difference rule many hearts and minds. This results in conflict, domination, control, etc. We are the ones who are creating the cultures we live in by choosing to exhibit certain actions, behaviors, habits, etc. As we are born, we are immersed into our environments of family, society, culture, etc., and we begin to accept and reject certain influences that act upon us through our interaction with our environment. This is how our ego identity personality construct comes into being. Our egos, personalities, and identities get constructed primarily in our early years and become difficult to change later on. This conditioning and programming is written not by us, but by all the influences we experience that shape us in our formative years. We pick role models, movies, music, books, sports, dance, etc., all and build a self-concept out of them. We identify with certain things more strongly than others, while others are sometimes strongly opposed. Those aspects we take into ourselves and identify with the most are usually, and unfortunately, those belief constructs and delusions, those false belief constructs and delusions, because they are so prevalent, that prevent us from learning more about who we truly are, from self-knowledge, self-realization, self-actualization, etc. Self-knowledge, self-realization, etc. is about self-control. This is dominion over ourselves and sovereignty instead of being ruled by something else. Desires, likes, and attachments develop that can rule us if we do not have the self-control, self-discipline, etc. No control over our attachments. To have no control over our attachments has those attachments ruling over us. Our ego can similarly lack self-control and rule instead of being a tool for our use. Understanding the distinction between our physical body, along with our ego, personality, identity construct, and the higher self and will of higher level awareness allows us to release our attachments to false beliefs in illusions we base our identity, ego, self-concept, etc. upon, and bring ourselves into greater alignment with sovereignty, self-dominion, etc. We can develop the courage and will to actively choose to change how we express our consciousness, to change who we are being by becoming, embodying, aligning, harmonizing, etc. with natural law, higher will, higher self, what is right, good, and true. It is a big task, but there are many people who have altered their habits and behavioral programming to become better versions of what they recognize they want to be. The ego also protects us from dangers encountered in our experiences, such as a predator or dangerous object in the physical world, or perceptions of being attacked by others that promote defensive responses. Currently, it seems the protective tool has usurped the entirety of the self to keep our consciousness in lower base modalities of being and expression. Perpetual conditions of survival keep the consciousness in a lower state of self-preservation in the physical world, where the ego self will dominate over our capacity to align with the higher self. When survival and self-preservation are the dominant way of life, which is Satanism, energy, thinking, acting, and living is directed towards maintaining an existence instead of engaging in higher order consciousness functionality to bring greater understanding of the reality we are currently experiencing. Satanism holds self-preservation as its central tenet. Survival is the most important law. You can do whatever you want to better your position of survival in society. This is social Darwinism. Lift yourself up no matter who you step on to get there, because you have to make sure you get to survive by being on top. Screw the rest, and that's life. This thinking is based in the fear of death. They need to maximize their rate of survival through control, domination, exploitation, etc. in order to determine and often create the outcome they desire, so that they are already in control of it when it comes into being. Recognizing the cycle of life to get past the fear of death and overcome identification with self-preservation leads to higher levels of awareness. There is nothing wrong with ego and its ability to discern distinction and separateness, sameness and unity. The ability to differentiate also allows us to see the similarities between things as well as their differences, as opposed to seeing everything as one big web of energy where there is no distinction whatsoever. Like a hammer, it has applicability and needs to be used within the design parameters it was intended for. Compared to a hammer, we are now using a hammer to open doors and screwing screws and changing tires, and it's not working. The fear of survival and exclusive perception with separation to promote survival and control is the issue. The out-of-control hammer doing things it shouldn't, just like the ego is doing things and taking control of things it shouldn't. We can discover our higher self, higher will, and universal cosmic natural moral law from our current condition by shattering the barriers we ourselves have erected, put there by institutions around us, the generations before us, and the very system we live under. The system is perpetuated and fed by us and those before us who subscribe to the systems of belief that enable it. Our higher goals of peace, freedom, etc. are not being attained because we do not understand natural law and keep creating more self-inflicted suffering on the general worldwide scale. Here is an image infographic with ego with man on top, and then eco with man amongst all the other animals on the planet. And then you have a left and right polarization again of ego on the left with pollution and destruction of the planet and decay. And then on the right you have eco, where you have animals living and it's all green and nice. And then it says at the bottom, we the people versus we are one. So it's humanity versus all the animals on the planet. And even people who think that they are here, even the New Agers I was living with who thought they were so good and New Agey and, oh, I'm in the Green Party and environmentalism and lollipop and whatever. They thought, oh yes, I'm in that picture. I put everything as equal. No, you don't. You're still murdering other animals and justifying it as, oh, well, at least I buy locally and I'm not, your coconut oil comes in from the truck, so you're doing more harm than me. I buy locally. You're an evil anti-environmentalist buying your coconut oil with, transportation. At least I'm buying locally and it's not transportation. Yeah, well, you're still murdering and I'm not, so congratulations. To continue the article, various forms of ego identification have us attached to many illusions and false beliefs. The illusions in the system are an extension of our identification with self-preservation. We think nature belongs to us and the whole system is there for us to achieve whatever we want. Conquest and exploitation is the general worldview of many people. We are actually a part of nature. Nature is not a dead mechanism for us to exploit. We are all on spaceship Earth. To think one part of the body can harm another and get away with it for long is ludicrous. We are actually one of the animals that could be eliminated and everything would improve on the planet. Many others, like bees, would result in loss of pollination that would greatly affect our survivability. Our ego tool is not being used correctly. we are cast in shadows of illusions. Instead of attachment to illusions that are negative, disempowering, and harm us, we can align with what is right, good, and true, positive, and empowering. We can replace attachment to what produces negative results to attachment to what produces positive results. So instead of being attached to the negative and producing negative results, let's attach to what's going to produce positive results, which is truth and morality. So we need to learn to let go of everything in our lives that is false, that is immoral, that is evil, and then we can finally attach to what is true, right, and moral. True, good, and moral. Attach to what produces positive results. Attachment to the physical body can be used to inform people about the health problems they may be unaware of. So if you're completely identified with the physical body, well then I can target you and I can say, well yeah, you're eating this garbage and you're slowly destroying your body and it's going to kill you. If you're so focused on Satanism and your self-preservation above everything else, well then you can target someone and help them change that way. But it's still focused completely on themselves and the my truth, my freedom, and my survival. They only care about their own health. They don't care about what they buy, how it affects other people, or what they're buying, if it even involves murder and rape and assault and harm and violence and exploitation and enslavement. People don't think about that because it's all about them. It's all about me, what I get out of it. Attachment to money can be used to inform someone about the exploitative nature of the monetary system, or the possibilities of free energy that can be introduced, since that would reduce the need to pay for an aspect of our living we are accustomed to. So since they're attached for money for survival, you can teach them about free energy and other things so that they can want to learn it because it's related to their survival. It's related to money they have to survive. So if you can get more money or find a way to spend less money in order to survive, well, people will want to hear that because it's related to their selfish worldview, to their attachment to themselves, which is another attachment people need to get to let go of. Let go of attachment to other people and to yourself. That's not mentioned in this article. That's something else I've developed an understanding about. People are way too attached to other people. It prevents them from seeing truth, from standing in truth. They stand in the falsity that other people are standing in so that they can maintain their delusional false unity, so that they can keep the peace and keep things running along, running smoothly, go with the flow. And some people are so attached to themselves they can't look at themselves honestly, so they can't see the truth and morality either. You're attached to other people preventing you from seeing truth and morality, and you're so attached to yourself it prevents you from seeing truth and morality. So detach from falsity and detach from yourself and detach from other people so that you can actually look at yourself objectively in objective detachment. And reattach to what's right, good, and true. To continue, our attachments need to be recognized, identified, and worked with so that we can choose to de-identify and detach from what disempowers and brings us negative results we do not want, and instead align with real things that truly empower us to manifest what we say we want. Admitting our mistakes and wrongdoings is very difficult at times. Abusers of intoxicating substances have trouble admitting their situation. Imagine how hard it can be for someone to confront and acknowledge that their worldview is not based upon what is true. This is extremely difficult because our worldview is a part of our conception of reality. Reevaluating our sense of reality takes a lot of work, energy, and courage. And just as it takes a lot of time, energy, and courage to reevaluate our sense of self, not only our sense of reality. So it takes a lot of work to change your worldview and change your self-image, change your self-concept. Most people prefer to adhere and remain attached to their sense of reality because it is much easier and comforting than to have one's reality shattered into pieces. As uncomfortable and lost one may temporarily feel in this state, admitting wrong and destroying the lies we base our lives upon is necessary in order to align our perceptions with reality and rebuild ourselves and our view of the world in alignment with what is right, good, and true, instead of blindly and tacitly accepting what we are told to be true. So yes, it's uncomfortable, but it's the greatest kind of love. It's the greatest kind of care. So love as the higher expansive force, which is what brings truth, and truth is the expansive force, which brings more truth, and it helps you care more, and that's the force of love as a higher force. So when you're uncomfortable and you're lost and you don't know what to do, well, good. It's a signal. Why don't you learn and become unlost? Why don't you change things so that you're not uncomfortable? These things are cues to help us learn. I'm glad I figured it out. I'm glad I didn't stay lost for so long. I'd probably be dead. And the pointlessness of the misery of this system of living we've created. Truth is a blessing. To have such a deep care for truth and morality is a blessing in your life. Please figure out a way to develop it. You need to care. For me, like I said in other articles before, it was Terror Storm that woke me up, shattered me to my core, and had me admit I was wrong and I was fooled and I was tricked. And then you got to recognize that either you don't want that to happen again, or you don't care and continue to live an ignorant, moronic, idiotic life where you're just content in being fooled and tricked, and you don't want to admit how wrong you are because you're completely trapped in calcified ego that's using falsity as an aspect of your sense of self, your ego personality identity construct, and your worldview, your sense of reality. So you don't even understand reality and you don't even understand yourself. But try explaining that to someone. I tried before I had this understanding, when I'd only gone through Mark Passio's work without developing it in greater capacities. I was trying to tell people how they don't understand themselves, but I didn't have the proper words. So yeah, people don't understand how they don't understand themselves, and they don't understand how they don't know reality either. It's a tricky thing to get people to comprehend. To continue, the calcified rigidity of the ego and its attachment to currently accepted modalities of living and being prevents an honest perception and appraisal of reality. Everyone who promotes, accepts, perpetuates, supports, etc., any institutionalized system, whether it's government, religion, police, military, etc., is locked into ego identification. Here is an example of how ego identification prevents someone from recognizing the truth by continuously engaging in excuses, justifications, and defensive rationalizations in order to maintain attachment to their perception of reality and their self-perception, self-image, self-concept, etc. of seeing themselves as being, quote, good. A teacher would defend the institution of so-called education because they are involved in that institution. A government official or employee would defend government because they are engaged in its functionality and perpetuation. Perceiving reality honestly is not possible due to the blinding effect attachment with identity has. Through association, participation, correlation, etc., the person identifies an aspect of who they are with this role they have chosen to engage in. They view any negative portrayal of the institution they are a part of as a negative portrayal of themselves, to which the ego personality identity construct views an attack as an attack on a component of the structure of who they are. If the institution is engaging in wrongdoings, and they support and perpetuate the existence of that institution, that means they are engaging in wrongdoings which they cannot accept and admit to. Their self-concept is that they are not someone who does wrong, but of someone who is a good person. We are often blinded from seeing the truth of the illusions, deceptions, and lies we have bought into because we have correlated and identified ourselves with them. Information is coming in that threatens to shadow our construct of reality, which threatens to disintegrate how we think of ourselves, and it makes us feel uncomfortable about ourselves. This information forces a reevaluation that many people are not willing to face. The process of cognitive dissonance emerges to deal with information that we perceive threatens us. We convince ourselves to accept what we wish and want to believe to be true, and essentially deceive and delude ourselves into living in a pseudo-reality of illusions. Attachment to illusions we base our sense of self upon keeps us in denial and avoidance, making excuses, justifications, and defensive rationalizations to maintain the viability in continued acceptance and attachment to the lies we choose to buy into. The roles we engage in are a part of who we are, and we are responsible for what we choose to do in our lives, how we choose to live it, etc. Engaging in false beliefs of illusions, deceptions, lies, etc. that have us creating our own suffering is our choice. We buy into it. They sell us lies, but we buy it. We don't have to buy it. We can remain ignorant of how all of this functions, or we can educate ourselves out of the darkness and seek the light of truth to show us how wrong and misguided we are, so that we can correct our misaligned paths and get back on track. Attachment to negative or illusory modalities of consciousness, being, living, etc., does not put us in contact with truth, good and right, natural law, and our higher self and higher will. The ego personality identity construct, having identified and attached to illusory false beliefs, is a principal force that prevents people from looking at the truth. The evidence is all around, but it will not be accepted because of how it conflicts with currently comfortable, accepted, and entrenched ways of living. The refusal to accept the truth is refusal to accept who we really are and who we can be in alignment with the higher self and higher will of universal cosmic natural moral law. We can learn, we can come to greater degrees of accurately understanding various truths. We may not be able to understand the totality of everything, or what some may refer to as the mind of God, but that recognition is not an excuse or justification to stop us from pursuing and empowering ourselves through attainment of truth. Negative ego attachment has people believing whatever they want to believe and thinking they already know everything they need to know to get by in life, not needing to learn anything new from anyone else. We can admit we don't know, just as we can admit we are wrong. Elevating and evolving our consciousness by getting over ourselves and our attachment to false identity constructs allows us to recognize just how fooled and wrong we were and how much we don't know. We can begin to seriously question and look into who I am apart from these illusions I based my identity upon. Our cups were formerly filled with illusions we maintained steadfast attachment to, but now that they have been emptied to a certain extent, we can reconstruct our understanding of who we are. Emptying the cup begins with admitting we are wrong and we don't know. Gaining an accurate understanding of who we are can be done. People have and continue to understand the true psychology of how we function and who we are. We can't simply adopt another belief or faith. We need to learn and validate things through our own understanding to determine whether it is true or not. We can learn from others who have changed themselves into greater alignment with what is good, right, and true, and see that process of change work in our own lives. The attachment to identity is very strong. We all want to have a secure conception of ourselves that we are comfortable with to get us through life. Releasing attachment to the importance of having a happy, feel-good, comfortable self-image is empowering because it allows us to face the truth in all its beauty and horror, negative and positive, light and dark. Instead of burying our heads in the sand trying to sustain a self-deceptive delusion of ourselves to validate the current condition and need not take the time, energy, and effort to change anything. Freedom from the illusions we base our false identity upon is possible if we choose to understand ourselves more. We can face reality and ourselves in full honesty and self-respect to see the truth of our shadow, darkness, demon, and negative. Through recognition of the causal factors that create our collective self-inflicted suffering, we can have the courage to develop the will to evolve, change, heal, purify, sublimate, and transmute ourselves in alignment, harmony, and unison with what is right, good, and true, with universal cosmic natural moral law, the higher self and higher will. Here I have an image meme quote by Henry David Thoreau. It says, "Not until we are lost do we begin to understand ourselves." Now, I am not sure how many people understand this phrase, but like I said, I really understand it. Only when you're lost can you begin to find yourself. If you've never reached this point in your life where you've realized you're lost and your understanding of reality isn't right, and your understanding of yourself isn't right, there's things missing in your understanding, you don't know what they are, but you can sense and understand that you're lost, then you can actually find things. But if you've never had this, and you think you're not, you were never lost and you don't need to be lost, and you're found and you know everything, well, unless you've been lost and unless you've reached the point where you realize you need to detach yourself and from the attachment to other people and the attachment to beliefs and the attachment to certain information, until you detach yourself from all that and reevaluate how you understand yourself, then you're not as lost as you thought you were. You haven't reached the point of lost in order to properly reconstruct yourself. Because you need to reach that point so that you can reconstruct yourself. Because if you're not at the point where you realize that you are lost, or that you were lost, and you're continually healing yourself, finding yourself, then you're never going to find yourself. Probably never will. Because you don't realize how lost you are. You think you're found, and you think the illusions are what's real. You think the unreality is reality. So I'm sure you can reconstruct and reevaluate and find the truth and morality in other ways. But like I said, this has happened to me in my journey before I came across all this understanding. I understood the aspect of being lost, and how, as far as I'm concerned, how essential it is in order to find yourself. Because if you don't admit that you're lost and how wrong you are and how fooled you are, then you're just going to continue into the future based on the current condition of ignorance. Anyways, this is the last paragraph for this article. One of the scariest positions to be in is not knowing who we are. We are so identified with the physical and the correlations and associations between ourselves and everything else that when our connection to identifying with something else is broken, shattered, dissolved, etc., we find ourselves without the previous identifier to give us an anchor for understanding how we think of ourselves. It leads to an identity crisis. There is a big ball of uncertainty inside. We then feel lost. Feeling lost and not knowing who we are is an important step towards learning the truth about ourselves and letting go of deceptions. I may not know everything about myself, but I have learned a great deal about who and what I am not, and have let go of those attachments to illusions I had my sense of self tied to. It has been and continues to be very liberating. That's the end of the article. So yeah, a lot of people get into an identity crisis. They get lost, but they don't go seeking truth and morality. They don't go seeking to understand more. They try to reframe and restructure themselves based on what they currently understand, which is still not understanding, which is still based in falsity and bullshit. So they recognize one thing that's false and they remove it, but then reconstruct their identity still based on all the falsity. They're still not seeking truth and morality. So some people still remain lost, and they still don't go to truth and morality, and they still don't wake up. They still don't get the catalyst to care to learn. Learning is like an alien thing. They still don't get it. Even after the lost identity crisis, they can't admit they're wrong, or if they do, they still don't want to learn. They still don't admit they still don't recognize that that's the solution. That's what I recognized immediately. Oh, what's this? Terror Storm? What's this documentary? Okay, I'll download it. And then I watched it and it blew me away. I could only watch half of it. It shattered me. And I could only watch the other half in the next week. But since that moment, what shattered me, what destroyed me, that's what made me realize even more. I already knew that I was lost, but that made me realize how even more lost I was, and how more wrong I was, and how much of a fool and idiot I was. And I could choose to learn, or I could choose to keep doing the useless shit that I was already doing. Anyways, truth and morality, the spiritual path of the knowledge quest on the way to greater attainment of aspects of truth. That is the path and the way. That's what spirituality is about. It's all about morality. If anyone talks to you about spirituality and morality is not involved in their understanding of spirituality, then it's not spirituality. It's pseudo-spirituality, and it's worth nothing as far as I'm concerned. Because the only thing that's worth anything in terms of spirituality is morality. Other than that, I don't care. And if you want to look at spirituality as what's unseen, in terms of causality and effect, okay, then look at it that way. I have a chart on that. Circle of life. Causality, consciousness, choice, and trivium. Sure, I can understand that. Thoughts and emotions in the causal realm as being spiritual, and the effects and the actions we produce in the material world, and yeah, that's matter. Sure. But what's this all about, cause and effect? What are we trying to do to create in the world? We're trying to create morally, so it's all based on morality. Even on the unseen, even in our minds, in the mental realm, in the imaginal realm, the things we imagine and create, well, they better be in alignment with truth and morality, and not with falsity and immorality and evil. So it's always all about morality. Thank you very much for taking the time and attention to listen to me speak about this article. I hope you enjoyed it and it was informative. Until next time, the next article will be Attachment to Institutional Belief Systems. Thank you for your time and attention. Have a nice day. Take care. Peace.